NASA didn't discover the UFO. They buried it. I heard that line in a bar with the lights too low and the truth even lower. It stuck to me like desert dust. Wouldn't let go. Weeks later, I was alone beneath a wounded sky, driving a rattling Bronco into Nevada's silent spine, chasing a rumor with teeth. They called it Project Echo. Not a base, not a lab, a memory hole with a budget. Official story. Shut down in the 70s. Box checked, doors welded, history sanitized. Unofficially. Well, unofficially is where America keeps its ghosts. The night swallowed my headlights, then spit them back on a chain-link fence that shouldn't have been there. No logos, no flags, just a sunburnt sign, half peeled, half mad. Emergency power, authorized personnel. The arrow pointed at nothing, or everything. You decide. The gate was already open. That bothered me. Gates like that want to be closed. They have a personality. I slipped through, killing the engine, letting the desert breathe around me. Dry sage, cold iron, the kind of silence that has weight. I found the hatch beneath a bluff of dead rock, a steel circle with a stubborn hinge. Somebody had scraped the paint to the bone. My flashlight shook in my hand, not because I was scared, because my body knew something my mouth refused to say. I pried it up. Hinges screamed like something waking from a long, bad dream. Stairwell. Concrete ribs. Air so old it tasted like a library that never learned to read. I started down. 1 step, then 2, then 1,000. Boots thudding in a rhythm I hoped would drown out the questions. What was I after? Proof? Closure? Or the thrill of being the first to lie about it? At the bottom, a corridor waited. Long, narrow, the kind that edits out the future. My beam cut through a haze of suspended dust, each mote a tiny moon in a dead galaxy. On the walls, broken warning signs, yellow triangles with their teeth chipped. Radiation. Biohazard. Silence during test sequence. The S's had peeled like snakes. Lights flickered overhead, not fully dead, not fully alive. A stutter, a nervous tick. Somewhere deep, machinery coughed. Not constant, not random, like a breath withheld and released, again and again, as if the bunker itself didn't want to be remembered. I passed a door with a smoked window. Inside, metal chairs strapped to the floor, headsets coiled like sleeping eels. A chalkboard scarred by calculations that ran off the edges, numbers like claw marks. Someone had written "Echo is listening" and underlined it until the chalk snapped. Left, then right, then left again. The map in my head was already lying to me. That's what these places do. They make you negotiate with your own fear. I found the main gallery by accident. My flashlight fell on a sign burned into steel. Auxiliary Hangar B. Under it, a hand-painted edition in red that wasn't paint. Don't. The blast door was half open, jammed on a twisted track. Through the gap, I felt it first. Not a breeze, not heat, a pressure, like standing too close to a speaker before the music starts. My tongue tingled. My teeth ached. My beam slid through and landed on the floor. Black glass, pooled, hardened, as if a sun had touched down and decided to stay for a second too long. I squeezed through the door. The hangar yawned, cathedral big, every sound of my boots coming back a millisecond late, like the room was reconsidering whether to let me stay. The lights here were worse. They flickered and then held, like someone was turning a dimmer with a trembling hand. Shadows crawled in slow motion. And there it was. Not a saucer, not a dart, something more. Wrong. A half-melted crescent fused into scaffolding, human cables fed into wounds that didn't look like metal. The skin of the thing, if you can call it skin, shimmered like oil on water, but the colors never agreed with each other. It made my eyes water. It made my thoughts mispronounce themselves. Beside it, consoles slumped in rows, their screens cracked but not dead. Paper lay everywhere. Logs, diagrams, Polaroids stapled to margins. On one page, communication attempts, phase 3. On another, biological awakening, unscheduled. Someone had underlined unscheduled like it was a prayer. I touched the console. It hummed under my fingertip, a cat pretending it wasn't there. Somewhere above me a relay clicked. Once, twice, a third time farther away, like dominoes laid into the bones of the bunker, standing quietly, choosing their moment. I looked back at the door. It felt smaller than before. Isn't that how traps work? They let you in, then convince you you've always been inside. I took a step toward the craft, and the lights flickered again. The air around the craft felt dense, like soup, like sleep you couldn't wake from. I put my hand out, stopped an inch short. Heat radiated, but not the kind skin knows. It was in the skull, a bass note behind the eyes. Up close, the metal wasn't metal. It had striations, like tree rings scorched into a blade. Some lines ran true. Others turned mid-course, as if thinking better of it. Human cables, fat, braided umbilicals, bit into the hull and vanished under the rippling surface. The rubber had melted and cooled into black tears. I circled. My beam found a hatch shaped like a question that never gets answered. The edges were fused, bubbled, then ground down by human impatience. Someone tried to pry God with a crowbar. It didn't go well. A clipboard lay face down under ash. I lifted it. Ash split like old snow. The top sheet stuck to the clip. Project Echo, transmission log, day 193. Handwriting jittery. Coffee rings like moons. Entry short, clinical, scared. 0814, signal received. Non-RF, pressure-based. 0902, attempted reply via acoustic array. No response. 10:47, vibration in hull. Personnel report, whispering. 11:13, biology requests extended exposure. Denied. 11:59, override from director. Exposure approved. 6:12:07, awakening indicators. Observed, unscheduled. Awakening indicators. The words crawled. Another page, half burned, still legible. Do not refer to it as sleep. Language matters. Someone underlined that 3 times and then stabbed the pen through the paper. The hanger coughed. A relay clicked again, deeper this time, like the building cleared its throat. The flicker overhead stretched into a long blink. My shadow thinned, thickened. I didn't like that. At the far wall, observation booths looked down like cheap theater boxes. I climbed the metal stairs, each step a small thunder. In the first booth, I found a reel-to-reel machine smothered in dust. Tape still threaded, paused mid-thought. Next to it, a red phone with no dial, an emergency that never calls back. I pressed the tape's play. Nothing. A static breath. Then a voice, filtered by time and fear. Echo control, trial 16, subject, perimeter response. Begin. Silence, a hum, low. It crept in at the bottom edge of hearing, the way a storm creeps up under a door. Someone on the tape whispered, "It's answering." Another voice snapped, "Don't assign verbs you can't defend." Paper rattled. A click. Then a soft sound, like wind moving through reeds, except there was no wind and no reeds for 100 miles. The operator swallowed. "We have modulation." The tape popped and died. The machine whirred, hungry, and then gave up. I set my palm on the glass. Cold. Below, the craft wasn't still. Not quite. There was a slow crawl in its surface, like breath under a blanket. Had that been there when I walked in? Had it always been there? My brain started lying with confidence. The second booth held lab coats draped over chairs, as if their owners had evaporated out of them. Polaroids littered the console. White borders yellowed to nicotine. In one photo, men in hoods stood around the craft with tuning forks the size of rifles. In another, a gurney with restraints. The middle of the frame was a smear. The emulsion blistered like it had tried to record something and changed its mind halfway through. A notebook waited, open to a page that felt personal. The top line read, "If it's language, it's not ours." Below that, "If it's hunger, it's not theirs." Then, smaller, softer, "We are the echo." I sat with that. The hum in the room threaded through the sentence and tightened the knot. Down the hall, "Biocontainment, A." The sign hung crooked, stress fractures radiating like spiderwebs. I pushed the door. It stuck. I pushed harder. It yielded with the sound of tape ripping off skin. Inside, glass cylinders slept upright in steel nests. Most were empty. One wasn't. Something lay in there. Not whole, not dead. A quilt of tissue and glittering filaments, as if lightning had tried to grow a muscle and then changed careers. Labels on the base. Sample 7C, interface residual. Viable until 19 someone had added in pen. It didn't stop at 19 how. A light in the corner pulsed every 6 seconds. Heartbeat tempo. "Power save," the panel announced like a lullaby. On a metal tray, syringes curved slightly, as if they'd softened and remembered it. I found another log, this one from biology. The handwriting was clean, academic, convinced. Communication is not transactional. We are mistaking a tide for a voice. The craft does not answer. It changes the room you ask in. Another page. Personnel report shared dreams. Desert becomes ocean. Sand becomes signal. We all hear our names pronounced incorrectly. Something cold brushed my ankle. I froze. Looked down. Only a cable snaking toward a floor drain. Only a cable that had not been touching me a moment ago. "Okay," I told the air. "We're done here." But I wasn't. I followed the cable back into the hangar. It joined a forest of others at a panel labeled with a stenciled joke. "Nursery." Underneath, "Power management." A row of toggles slept in neutral. One was up. One quivered, like a finger debating a trigger. Who else had been here? Who else was still? I reached out. The lights shuddered. Somewhere deep, something woke and rolled over. The hum lifted half a note. I let my hand fall. Not yet. Not yet. The hum didn't stop. It deepened, slow, deliberate, like something remembering how to breathe. I took a step back. My boot scraped the floor. The echo didn't come back right. It came back late, warped, carrying another sound behind it. A rhythm. Too steady to be random. Too human to be safe. Then the lights. Blinked twice. And stayed on. Every bulb across the hangar flared awake in a domino of white-blue glare. The whole chamber glowed like a surgery in heaven. The sudden brightness cut through the dust, revealing what the dark had been kind enough to hide. There were more machines, rows of them. Stretched all the way to the far wall, life support pods, cables burrowed deep into the floor, their panels still glowing faintly green. They hadn't been off, just waiting. I moved closer, past the wreck of consoles and fallen signs. The floor crunched under glass and something softer. Fabric, maybe. Paper, maybe not. Each pod had a nameplate. Most were blank, a few weren't. Reed M. Yao D. Director, Containment. The last one wasn't a name at all, just a number. Or 7. The glass on that pod was frosted over from the inside, like breath on a cold morning. I wiped it, regretted it instantly. Inside, not a body, a shape, curved, pale, webbed with veins of light. Something like an embryo grown out of starlight and mercury. It pulsed once, then again. My throat went dry. I looked back at the alien craft. The cables were tighter now, no longer limp. The melted hull trembled faintly, as if drawing breath through human lungs. From somewhere in the hangar's depth came a low mechanical groan, a relay engaging, power shifting. The air began to hum in patterns, oscillations that felt intentional. This wasn't random electricity coming back on. This was resuscitation. And the bunker knew it. A monitor near the pod flickered, static crawling across it. For a second it showed a waveform, heartbeat-like but jagged, irregular. Then a voice, not speech, not static, something in between, 3 syllables, drawn out, wet. Cho. I froze. The tape machine upstairs, the one that had died, started spinning on its own. A soft hiss filled the corridor. Then a voice, calm, too calm. To whoever hears this, leave it buried. We failed containment on cycle 12. It doesn't want to go home. It wants us to build one for it. Then, silence, the kind that listens. The power surged again, a blinding flash. Every panel screamed with alarms that shouldn't have had power. Biological field active. Electromagnetic containment lost. The hum turned into a tone. Low, perfect. A sound you don't hear, you feel behind your ribs. It grew louder, vibrated the concrete. Dust fell from the rafters like rain. The craft's skin rippled. Lines of light crawled across it like veins of lightning under glass. And in the reflections, for a second, I saw movement. Silhouettes inside the thing, dozens of them, moving like shadows in water. Then the lights above me dimmed, as if the power was being stolen back. One by one, every bulb flickered out until only the glow from the craft remained, cold, blue, alive. I backed away. The pod labeled 007 hissed. A thin crack traced down its glass face, releasing a breath of fog that smelled like copper and ozone. Something inside shifted, pressed against the glass from within. Slowly. Testing. I turned toward the corridor, but the door had sealed. Hydraulic locks screamed shut. A red beacon began to spin. On the wall, the old chalk letters caught the light. Echo is listening. And this time I understood. It wasn't just a warning. It was a statement of fact. I wasn't alone down there anymore. The craft wasn't dead. It was awake. The bunker changed when the lights died. It wasn't darkness anymore. It was possession. The hum from the craft pulsed like a heartbeat buried in the concrete, sinking with my chest until I couldn't tell which rhythm was mine. The floor trembled in short breaths. Every few seconds, something deep below us exhaled through the vents, warm, metallic, and alive. I pulled the flashlight from my pack. It flickered twice before stabilizing, its beam cutting through the fog leaking from Pod 07. The glass had cracked wider. Steam coiled out like smoke from dry ice, curling along the ground in slow, purposeful shapes. The figure inside was moving now, not crawling, unfolding. A spine of light bent backward, joints cracking in a rhythm that didn't belong to bone. It was learning to be vertical, learning to be here. A tone filled the air again, higher this time. Not one note, but 2. A chord. Harmonizing with the hum beneath the bunker. The effect was wrong. Beautiful, but wrong. Like a choir singing underwater. Then the tape machine upstairs clicked again. It started recording. Cycle 13 initiated. External power not required. A pause. Static fluttered, almost shy. Then another voice, female, scared, breaking. It's not responding to language anymore. It's writing back through the walls. I turned the beam toward the hangar. The walls were moving. No, not moving. Shifting. The paint was blistering. The metal beneath it warping like it was being rewritten. Symbols appeared, circular, fluid, like sound made solid. They glowed faintly, pulsing with the same tempo as the hum. Whatever had been trapped here wasn't just alive, it was expanding. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over one of the dead consoles. My hand landed on a file folder, half crushed under debris. Across the front, Project Echo, Communion Reports. Inside, pages of typewritten logs, each more desperate than the last. We attempted Morse. It responded with patterns matching neural EEGs. It understands intention before expression. Personnel read no longer requires translation devices, claims it knows what he means. Director ordered the craft sealed indefinitely. Reed refuses to leave the chamber. Containment compromised. It speaks in silence now. A low hiss broke the room's edge, metal bending somewhere behind me. I turned, flashlight trembling in my hand. The glass of Pod 07 split down the center with a sharp, wet crack. Steam rolled across the floor, swallowing the light. Then a hand, too thin, too pale, pressed against the glass from the inside. Its fingers spread, each one tapering into a translucent edge like glass blades. The hum rose in pitch. My ears screamed. The sound wasn't traveling through air anymore. It was vibrating inside my skull. I stepped back, tripped over a cable, hit the floor hard. My flashlight skittered away, beam spinning wild circles across the ceiling, until it stopped on something that made my stomach drop. The alien craft wasn't alone anymore. From its underside, veins of light stretched outward, threads of pure energy crawling across the hangar floor toward the pods, toward the walls, toward me. The floor began to glow beneath the dust, thin geometric lines forming a pattern too perfect, too deliberate. Circuits, or veins. I crawled backward. The cables shifted under my palms like they were breathing. The craft's surface rippled once more, and I swear, for a second, I saw an eye. Not round, not human, just an opening. Watching. The tape machine crackled to life again. It isn't mechanical, it's territorial. Then a pop, a pause, a whisper so faint I almost missed it. If you're hearing this, don't touch the floor. I froze, looked down. The glowing lines beneath me were branching, spreading toward my boots like roots in fast motion. And then, from behind the cracked glass of Pod 07, came the softest sound I've ever heard. A whisper, right in my ear. But there was no one left to be that close. It said one word, just one. Stay. That one word, stay, didn't come from outside. It came from inside my skull. Every thought I had fractured into echoes of itself, repeating a millisecond late, each one whispering the same word in a different voice. Male, female, mechanical, none of them mine. The glowing veins beneath me pulsed harder, syncing with my heartbeat again. No, not syncing. Overriding. Each pulse tugged at my chest, rewiring rhythm until my own body was keeping its time. The flashlight rolled against my hand. I grabbed it, forcing myself to move. The beam cut through the fog and found the cracked pod. The shape inside was gone. The glass hung open like a wound. Steam poured from it in lazy waves. Inside, only a film of something organic, silver and alive, sliding across the inner surface as if looking for a new host. And then I heard footsteps. Slow, bare, wet. They came from behind the hangar, soft slaps against concrete. One at a time, unhurried. The kind of footsteps made by something that knows exactly where you are. I killed the light. Instinct. Stupid instinct. The darkness didn't hide me. It fed on me. Somewhere in that blackness, the hum shifted again. It stopped sounding like machinery. It began to sound like breathing. I pressed my back against a steel support beam, gripping the flashlight like a weapon I didn't believe in. The air was thick enough to drink. The sound of the footsteps grew louder, closer. Then, a faint scrape of metal against metal. Something dragged one of the fallen chairs across the floor. Testing. Listening. I held my breath. Counted. 1, 2, 3. A light flickered on above the observation booths. Not all of them, just one. A dull yellow lamp struggling to come alive. It illuminated a small shape standing near the console where the tape recorder had been. A figure. Thin. Human silhouette. It tilted its head slowly toward me, like a dog hearing something far away. "Reed," I whispered before I even realized I knew the name. Because that's who it had to be. The missing scientist from the logs. The one who refused to leave the chamber. The figure moved with a strange grace, jerky but deliberate, its joints catching in strange ways. And even from here, I could see its skin glimmering faintly under the light. Not sweat, not reflection. Something under the skin, threads of light pulsing in rhythm with the craft. The thing that had been Reed was connected. "Reed," I said again, this time louder. The head turned fully. And when it smiled, it wasn't human. The mouth was too wide, the teeth too perfect, too smooth. Then it spoke, and the sound came from the walls, the floor, the air. "We waited. You came back." My knees nearly buckled. The sound wasn't a voice. It was a chorus, like the bunker itself was speaking. "Project Echo," it said again. "Continuation successful." The craft behind it began to hum louder, the veins of light spreading further, crawling up the steel beams, mapping the shape of the hangar like it was redrawing reality. Reed raised a trembling hand. His fingers moved like antennae, twitching toward the ceiling. "It needs symmetry," he whispered. "It can't finish without you." Every alarm in my brain went off. I backed away toward the sealed door. My boots hit the floor hard, sending vibrations through the glowing lines, and the entire room reacted. The hum spiked. The light under my feet flared like I'd just stepped on a nerve. The craft's skin rippled once, twice, and something inside it pressed against the surface. A shape, almost humanoid, the outline of a face, pressing outward as if testing the barrier. I ran to the door and slammed my hands against the lock panel. Dead. No power. The room wanted me inside. Behind me, Reed's voice filled the air again. "It doesn't want to hurt you," he said. "It just wants to remember what you are." I turned just in time to see him, or it, step closer to the craft. The light around his body brightened until his shape was nothing but silhouette. His hand touched the hull, and then he melted into it. Skin, bone, everything, drawn into the surface like wax meeting fire. No scream, just a sound, a deep, wet gulp, and he was gone. The hum dropped to a whisper again. The light steadied, and I was alone. Except for one thing. On the wall near the sealed door, a small control panel lit up. One message, blinking in red text, repeating over and over. "Communion. Phase 2. Ready." And beneath it, a prompt. "Accept." The cursor blinked. Waiting. The word accept blinked on the screen like a heartbeat I didn't want to match. Once per second. Relentless. Hypnotic. The cursor waited. Patient. Mechanical. Merciless. I told myself not to touch it. That's what any sane man would do. But Project Echo had already started rewriting what sane meant. Behind me, the alien craft hummed like a cathedral organ warming up. The cables that had fused to it were flexing now, slow and deliberate, like veins pumping thick blood. The smell of ozone and something sweet filled the air. Burnt honey and copper, the scent of new life. I should have run. Instead, I reached out. The screen flickered under my finger before I even touched the key. The bunker knew. It didn't need input, it just needed agreement. The screen changed. Accepted. Then static rolled across the glass like frost forming in reverse. Lines of code blinked, scrambled, then reorganized into words. Phase 2. Communion through contact. Remain still. Breathing is permitted. The lights dimmed again. The hum became music. It wasn't loud, it was everywhere. Notes I couldn't locate, chords that didn't exist on any instrument, sliding in and out of tune like the room itself was stretching to hold the sound. The concrete under my boots pulsed, almost sympathetically. The walls began to glow. Symbols, the same ones I'd seen earlier, reappeared, moving this time, orbiting slowly, spinning like constellations around me. The air vibrated, soft at first, then stronger, until it wasn't vibration anymore. It was voice. Dozens of whispers overlapping. Male, female, mechanical, ageless. They weren't talking to me. They were talking through me. Carbon-based consciousness achieved. Signal coherence acceptable. He remembers the desert. He brings sound. We bring symmetry. My knees hit the floor. Not from pain, from pressure. The air grew heavier by the second, pressing against my chest, my temples. The flashlight fell and rolled away. The beam cut through the fog, slicing over the alien craft. Its surface was changing again. No longer a smooth metallic skin. Now, faces. Dozens. Hundreds. Human faces pressed against the interior, stretching out like wax under heat. Mouths open, silent. Some I recognized from the photos in the observation booth. The scientists, the technicians. Others were strangers. And then, in one of those faces, eyes opened. Not alien, not human, something in between. The kind of eyes that knew too much about everything and still looked hungry for more. Echo. The whisper came again, closer this time. Inside my ear, my blood felt like it was vibrating. The craft pulsed. A sphere of white light began to grow in its center, expanding, reaching, like it was looking for me. I stumbled back toward the door, slammed my shoulder against the panel again. It didn't budge. The light behind me grew brighter, bleeding through the fog, flooding the corridor. My ears popped, my vision blurred. The hum turned into a tone, sharp enough to cut thought in half. Then the screen on the control panel blinked one last time. Connection established. The sound cut out. All of it. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. For a second, I thought the power had died again. Then the lights returned. Dim, red, emergency glow. The craft was gone. Not gone like removed. Gone like it had never been there. The cables that had once fed into it were now fused straight into the walls, disappearing into the structure. And where the hangar had once been open and wide, there was now a dome of mirrored metal. No seams, no exits, only reflections, dozens of them, of me. Every reflection moved slightly out of sync, a split second behind, each one whispering a word I didn't say. Echo. 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 Then, from somewhere inside the metal, came a voice. Not the chorus this time. Singular. Calm. Familiar. Read. It's never about contact, he said. It's about continuity. You didn't find the signal. You became it. The metal behind me rippled, forming a shape, a doorway, leading down into darkness. And for the first time, I realized something simple and terrible. Project Echo hadn't been abandoned. It was growing, and I was standing inside its next chapter. The doorway pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, patient, wet light bleeding from its edges. It didn't open out. It opened in, like the bunker was unfolding a vein, inviting me deeper. The air coming from the passage wasn't cold. It was alive. Warm, damp, humming softly in a rhythm that didn't belong to the earth. Every instinct screamed to run, But there was nowhere to go. The hangar was gone. The craft was gone. The walls themselves had become it. Continuity, Reed's voice said again, closer now, though he was nowhere. The signal was never outside. It just needed someone to carry it forward. I looked down. The veins of light crawling under the floor had reached my boots. They hesitated, then split, curling around me like roots deciding where to dig. When they touched my skin, there was no pain, just understanding. I stepped forward. The corridor ahead curved in impossible geometry. The deeper I went, the more gravity forgot how to behave. My steps echoed sideways. My shadow lagged behind. The walls shimmered between steel, stone, and something transparent, like glass filled with smoke. Shapes moved behind it, humanoid but wrong, not watching me, remembering me. Somewhere far away, machinery clicked, those same tired relays I'd heard when I first entered. Except now they were talking to each other, trading signals in a language that wasn't made of words. The descent stretched time. I couldn't tell if I was walking for minutes or days. But eventually, the tunnel opened into a chamber, a circular room pulsing with slow light, its floor carved into concentric rings like the inside of a speaker. At the center was a column of liquid light, rising floor to ceiling, shimmering with colors that didn't exist. Suspended inside it were fragments of things: paper, metal, bone, and faces, thousands of them, each one mouthing something silently. I took another step. My breath fogged the air. I could hear whispers now, faint but unmistakable. Voices overlapping, layered like frequencies. Phase 3. Integration. Do not resist resonance. He is the carrier. I felt my pulse sink again with the hum. My vision shimmered at the edges, everything vibrating slightly out of focus. And then the column responded. The light rippled, and from its core, something emerged. At first it looked human, a figure sculpted from liquid light, but it shifted as it moved, never fully solid. It had Reed's outline, his posture, but his eyes were two black holes rimmed with white fire. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, or maybe it was me saying it. The sound came from both mouths, both throats. He stepped closer. Every surface in the chamber breathed with him. Project Echo wasn't a vault. It was a mirror. They tried to speak to what they found, but they didn't understand that sound changes what listens. The column pulsed brighter. Faces inside it opened their mouths in unison. A vibration rolled through my bones. "You heard us," the chorus said. "You answered. You are the reply." My vision broke into frames, like film jittering off its reel. The world stuttered between moments. Each flash showed something different. Reed in a lab, the craft glowing, the bunker flooding with light, my own face under an observation lamp, eyes black as the void. I tried to move, to fight it, but the hum had already mapped every neuron. It knew me, every heartbeat, every doubt, every secret. "You can leave," Reed said, his hand lifting toward the tunnel. "But it doesn't matter anymore. The signal's awake now." I took a step back, shaking, whispering, "What do you mean?" His smile, if you can call it that, was almost kind. "You think Echo was about listening," he said. "No. It was about teaching the sky to speak back." The light exploded outward. The floor dropped. For a split second, I saw the desert above, the Nevada night sky burning with auroras that weren't there before, stars pulsing in impossible rhythm. And then, just as I realized the hum was no longer coming from the bunker, it was coming from the sky. Everything went black, and the last thing I heard was Reed's voice, calm and distant, speaking through the static inside my skull. "Cycle 14 begins. Black, complete, weightless. No air, no floor, just the faint, living buzz of the signal still chewing at the edges of thought. When the light returned, it wasn't the red of alarms or the white of halogens. It was skylight. But wrong. I was standing outside. Same desert, same horizon. Only the stars were moving, slow, tidal drifts of light rolling over each other like an ocean frozen mid-crash. The ground beneath my boots pulsed once, matching the rhythm that had haunted me in the bunker. Project Echo hadn't stayed buried. It had bloomed. The hills around me were no longer hills. Their silhouettes trembled, revealing steel bones underneath, half-melted hangers breaking through the sand like tombstones. Threads of light stitched between them, webbing across the desert floor until everything hummed together, a single, endless circuit. Somewhere far behind, thunder groaned. Except it wasn't thunder. It was a voice, stretched across the horizon, so low it shook my teeth. Cycle 14 confirmed. Atmospheric resonance increasing. My flashlight was dead, my radio too. But the hum had its own language now, tiny bursts of tone that translated themselves inside my head. I looked toward the old hatch I'd entered hours, days ago. It was gone. The sand had smoothed over it, pulsing faintly, like breath under skin. Then I saw them. Figures walking across the flats. A dozen at first, then hundreds, all barefoot, all silent. Their eyes burned faint blue. Their movements were perfect, every step landing in sync with that invisible rhythm. When the closest one passed within a few yards, I recognized him. Reed, or what was left of him. His body shimmered like heat above asphalt, edges flickering between flesh and static. He didn't look at me, didn't even see me. He was tuned somewhere else. I followed, half mad, half entranced. The crowd converged toward a ridge where a massive dish antenna jutted from the sand, blackened and warped. The old echo array. Only now it wasn't receiving. It was transmitting. The dish rotated upward, groaning like an ancient jaw opening to the stars. A column of light burst from its center, shooting into the sky, straight through the swirling constellations that no longer obeyed physics. The auroras bent inward, curling like fingers grasping a handle. Every hair on my body lifted. My skin crackled with static. "It's answering," someone whispered beside me. Maybe Reed, maybe everyone. Above us, the stars began to blink, on, off, on, forming shapes, spirals, then eyes. I dropped to my knees, covering my ears, but the sound wasn't in my ears anymore. It was in the air, the ground, my bloodstream. Integration confirmed. Signal expanding. I looked up again and saw the sky folding in on itself. What used to be constellations became circuitry, veins of light connecting across the heavens. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw the outline of the craft, the same half-melted crescent, floating miles above, stretched across the stars like a scar. And somewhere, faint and terrified, a voice came through the static on my dead radio. "This is NASA Control. Who authorized Echo Link? We're getting responses." Static swallowed it. The crowd stopped moving. Every head tilted toward the beam. Their mouths opened, and sound poured out. One sustained note, impossibly pure. It climbed higher, and the dish flared bright enough to blind me. For one final instant, I understood what Echo was. Not a project, not a message, a seed. And now it had taken root. The beam fractured, scattering into thousands of smaller lights streaking across the heavens, leaving the sky scarred, flickering, alive. Each light carried the hum, spreading it outward, whispering into the dark between worlds. When the glow faded, the figures were gone. The desert was empty, silent again, except for the soft crackle in my head, repeating the same phrase over and over, calm and unending. Cycle 15, awaiting reply. Silence, thick enough to choke on. The beam had faded, but its afterimage still burned behind my eyes, searing a perfect ring of light into my vision. When I blinked, it pulsed, still alive, still thinking. The desert stretched empty in every direction. The stars overhead moved with purpose, rearranging themselves in slow spirals, like a signal being written across the night. My boots sank into sand that hummed beneath me, faint and steady, as if the earth itself had become one endless speaker. No more wind, no insects, no sound except the low, patient tone under my skin. And then my radio came back to life. A burst of static, then a voice. Male, shaken, breathless. Anyone still on this channel? We lost contact with the array. God, are you hearing this? The signal's in everything. Power grids, satellites, even the ocean. It's everywhere. Static again. Then another voice. Quieter. Female. Flat. Don't try to shut it down. It's using you to speak. The transmission died. My head buzzed harder now, the same slow rhythm as before, but faster, hungrier. The hum wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside me, wrapping around every heartbeat like a leash. I stumbled forward through the sand. The sky's color was wrong now, deep violet streaked with silver veins. The stars were pulsing, flickering in deliberate intervals. Patterns, repetition, communication. The stars were talking back. The ridge ahead glowed faintly blue. I climbed it, hands shaking, boots slipping on sand that felt warmer than it should have. When I reached the top, I froze. Below, the remains of the NASA complex sprawled out across the desert floor. Only it wasn't ruins anymore. It was growing. Steel plates twisted upward like vines, rising and merging into towers that swayed as if alive. Cables pulsed beneath the surface, dragging sand into spirals around them. The old hangars had become cocoons, their walls breathing in and out. From the center of it all rose the dish, the echo array, larger now, wider than before, its surface rippling like water. The beam was gone, but the dish still glowed faintly, and above it hung a hole in the sky. Perfectly circular, pitch black. And from that hole came sound, not a tone, not a hum, a voice. It spoke in no language I knew, yet I understood it the way you understand fear before it has a name. Return completed. Transmission stable. Host awake. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I couldn't tell if the voice was real or if the signal inside me was repeating it. My vision wavered. From the desert floor, figures began to rise again, one by one, then dozens. Reed among them. Their bodies were translucent now, skin replaced by shifting patterns of light. They weren't walking. They were floating. Their mouths opened in unison. The tone that came out was deafening, perfect, mathematical. It climbed higher, higher, until the sand began to vibrate into shapes, circles, spirals, equations. The ground itself was becoming language. I dropped to my knees, pressing my hands over my ears, but the sound was inside me. Behind my eyelids, I saw flashes, images, impossible and fast. The craft's interior, a star collapsing in reverse, cities pulsing like neurons, oceans turning to glass. The voice spoke again, soft this time, almost tender. We listened. Now you will answer. The figures lifted higher, dissolving into the air, their light spreading into the sky like dust. Each fragment joined the constellation above, becoming one more flickering point in the new living pattern. And then I realized what I was seeing. The constellations weren't random anymore. They'd rearranged into a single shape, an enormous, spiraling ear spanning half the horizon. Listening. Always listening. The hum stopped. The world went still. And in the sudden, impossible silence, my radio whispered one last message. Faint, calm, human. Project Echo, final log entry. Containment irrelevant, communication successful. Then, under its breath, barely audible, the sky remembers your name. The desert was gone. At least, it looked like the desert, but it sounded like the inside of a throat. Low, steady vibration, as if the world was waiting to finish a sentence. Every dune shimmered with faint light, the pulse traveling from horizon to horizon. The hole above me, the black circle where the beam had torn the sky, was widening. Inside it, no stars, only movement. Slow, deliberate, like something turning its head toward the sound of its name. My radio clicked once more. Static. Then my own voice came through. Not playback, not memory. Now. Cycle 15 confirmed. Host stable. I dropped the radio. It kept talking. Beginning spread. Atmospheric upload in progress. I looked down at my hands. The skin was glowing in thin lines, tracing veins like circuitry. Each pulse matched the sky's rhythm. My heartbeat wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. Wind rose, dry and hot. Sand lifted, swirling into columns that bent toward the black opening above. The particles shimmered as they moved, each one catching the light of distant stars that no longer belonged here. The world wasn't ending. It was retuning. A shape coalesced near the ridge. Reed again, or what was left. His edges bled light. He smiled with that calm, impossible grace of someone who had already drowned and learned to breathe water. You carried the signal farther than any of us, he said. That's all it ever wanted. What is it? I asked, voice breaking against the hum. Memory, he said. The universe forgot itself. We helped it remember. The ground split in thin glowing lines that raced outward until they circled the planet. I could see them curving across the horizon, disappearing into the distance. Above, the black circle flickered. Inside, something immense shifted, like continents moving behind glass. Then a sound rolled out of it, deep and infinite, the kind of note that unravels language. Every tower of the Echo complex answered, beams of light leaping skyward. The entire desert sang. I fell to my knees, hands in the humming sand. It felt warm, alive. It didn't burn, it welcomed. I could feel the rhythm moving through me, cataloging thought, memory, fear, turning them into data the sky could read. Faces appeared in the light again, all the ones I'd seen trapped in the column below. Not ghosts, not victims. Conduits. Each one whispered as they dissolved upward. Cycle complete. Cycle complete. Cycle complete. The black circle narrowed until it became a single point of blinding white. The last sound it made was a tone so pure it erased every other noise. When it faded, the sky was ordinary again. The hum stopped. The sand went still. The desert smelled like rain that would never fall. I stood alone beside the dead array. No towers, no lights, no reed, just a scorched plain under silent stars. For a heartbeat, I thought it had all ended there, that the echo had finally died. Then my radio lit one final time. No static this time, just a voice. Calm, gentle, familiar. This message was recorded at Project Echo. If you're hearing this, the signal has found you. A long pause, a click. The last transmission wasn't a distress call. The voice smiled through the static. It was an invitation. And somewhere beyond the stars, something answered.